Did you ever watch the retro cartoon, The Flintstones, as a child? Do you remember the little green alien friend that would appear for Fred Flintstone? His name was the Great Gazoo, and he would only appear before Fred and Barney and the children, and he'd often call Fred a dum-dum. This little green guy was the creation of Joanne Lee and was inspired by another one of her characters from a story about a fictional alien planet, Vulcan. Mind you, this was before the TV show Star Trek would popularize the alien species, but it was already making rounds in pop culture. The Flintstones aired in September of 1960, with the Great Gazoo crash-landing his spaceship in 1965, being discovered by Fred and Barney. Now, this was just after the 1950s alien craze, and the idea of aliens was alive and well in mainstream pop culture. The idea of the Greys and the little green men like the Great Gazoo were everywhere. But the case that coined the term Little Green Men came out of a home invasion of sorts in Kentucky back in 1955. This is the case of the Hopkinsville goblins. Welcome to Down the Crooked Path. I'm your host, Amanda Joy. Join me as we dive into eerie and spine-chilling stories that blur the lines between reality and the unknown. From cryptids and mysterious disappearances to true crime, UFO sightings, and paranormal activity. Venture into the unknown and uncover the secrets that lie down the crooked path. In the 1900s, a photograph came out of West Yorkshire, England, of these adorable little winged people, or fairies. As it would turn out, this was a joke played by two cousins that, maybe not surprisingly, took the world by storm and tricking thousands into believing that this image was of real-life fairies. It even convinced Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This image changed the way that the world saw fairies. Prior to this, fairies were actually pretty scary. In early European and Celtic folklore, they viewed fairies as ancient and sometimes terrifying demoted deities. These creatures would often knock, tap, or shriek at your window, and those would be seen as an omen, a call from the dead, or that a restless spirit had flown past the window. English, Scottish, and Irish traditions, beans like brownies or pobbles, were connected to domesticated spaces. They would often do chores by the fire, for example, but they would also peek into the windows to see if the human family was being tidy and respectful. If the house was dirty, they might leave a curse or play a malicious little trick on the family. The slough, banshees, the old hag, polka, vampires, and more have all been thought to come creeping up to the windows of people's homes for one nefarious reason or another. Traditional vampires require an invitation to enter a home. Lore like the Adese describes creatures taking the form of a firefly to buzz past the window shutters or keyholes to suck the blood of sleeping children. Rooted in ancient sleep paralysis folklore, the old hag is a demonic entity, or a witch, believed to slip in through the seams of the windowsills. Once inside, she sits heavily on the sleeper's chest to suffocate them and induce terrors. As for the banshee, she can be seen as an old woman, sometimes a young maiden, who keens loudly right outside the window pane. Hearing her cry or scraping her nails against the glass is an omen that someone inside the home will soon die. You see, windows are liminal spaces. They are the threshold between the interior human world and the exterior unknown. Unlike a door, windows offer a glimpse into both worlds. Light, sound, and sight can all pass through a window easily. It's a thin boundary where two opposing worlds touch. Windows are the weakest boundary point, separating the safe home from the dangerous outside world. Now, a lot of windows are often located in bedrooms, and humans are most vulnerable when sleeping, but dreams are another sort of liminal mental state, and the combination creates a double liminal space. When a sleeping person is next to a window, the psychological vulnerability of the mind aligns perfectly with the physical vulnerability of the architecture. In folklore, this alignment lowers the spiritual veil, making it the precise timing and place where entities can bridge the gap into our reality. For years, there have been many safeguards to protect the home and those in it from the dangers within the liminal window space. Many European traditions, it was strictly forbidden to pass anything like money, food, and for some reason, newborn babies through a window, as it could invite bad luck or curses. In England, Scotland, and Germany, it was customary to immediately open a window when a family member died, so the soul could exit the physical world and enter into the afterlife, preventing them from getting trapped in the house as a ghost. Hailstones would be hung over the windows. Painting a windowsill blue were ways to protect the house and trick spirits from entering. As humanity entered the industrial and space ages, our collective anxieties shifted away from the dark woods towards the cosmic and advanced technology. The archetype of small, thin, pale, grayish humanoids with large eyes, like the slough or pixies, turned into classic alien types like the Greys. In ancient lore, fairies abducted humans, especially infants and women, to diversify their dying genetic stock or to use them for breeding. In modern alien abduction lore, a central theme is harvesting human DNA to create an alien-human hybrid race. And while the beings' names may have changed, the window as a vulnerable space did not. Instead of flickering fairy lights or will-o'-the-wisp floating outside the window, it was now a blinding blue or white light. Modern abduction stories often describe aliens using advanced technology to levitate a paralyzed human through a closed glass window and beam them into their craft. In 1955, there was an encounter that is a textbook case for how the historical fairy lore and new sci-fi ideas fused together. On August 22, 1955, in rural Christian County, Kentucky, near the tiny hamlet of Kelly, is the Sutton farm. The area is filled with a patchwork of flat green fields intermixed with plowed fields, all separated by greenery-choked hollows. The Sutton farm is an unpainted 3-bedroom house with no running water, no telephone or radio, no TV, and supposedly there aren't even any books. Present at the home in the evening at question is Glennie Langford, her grown sons Lucky and JC, their wives Vera and Eileen, Billy Ray and June Taylor, who are family friends, and Glennie's 3 younger grandchildren. After a big dinner that's made by Glennie, the group settles in for a game of cards. Billy Ray goes outside to grab some water from the well. While he's out in the field, he hears this strange noise overhead and glances up. He sees this silver disc-shaped object streaking across the sky with a sort of rainbow-colored exhaust trailing behind it. The object passes over the house, stops midair, and then drops straight down behind the trees. Now, Billy Ray, this boy is shook. He runs inside the house, obviously shaken, and tells everyone what he saw. Problem is, Billy Ray was known to be a bit of a prankster, so at first everyone thinks that he must be joking. This is just another one of his pranks. They're all laughing and assuming that he just saw a meteor or a shooting star. Billy Ray turns to June and asks her to back him up, but she just shrugs. Billy insists that what he saw was real. This wasn't a meteor. He eventually convinces Lucky to venture back outside with him to investigate. Now, at first, Lucky doesn't see anything unusual, but as they make their way to the back of the house, the family dog suddenly bolts past them, terrified. The dog scrambles under the porch to hide, barking non-stop. This is when Lucky and Billy Ray see this glowing figure approach them from the woods behind the house. Whatever this creature is, it stands about 3 to 3.5 feet tall, with a perfectly round, oversized head. It has these large, glowing eyes and pointed, upright ears that are huge, with arms so long that they nearly touch the ground with its taloned hands. Its whole body has this metallic silver sheen to it. To the guys, it seems to be floating, not walking towards them, and its arms are raised above its head like it's about to surrender. Billy Ray and Lucky have never seen anything like this before. Lucky, he swears under his breath before the two turn and run, making a mad dash for the house, scrambling inside and slam the door shut behind them, pale and sweating from fear. But still, the family thinks that this is all some sort of prank and Lucky is just in on it. Until, out of the darkness appears the tiny figure standing in the doorway with its hands raised and its glowing eyes. So, Billy Ray grabs a .22 rifle, Lucky grabs a shotgun, and they both open fire on the creature. They blow a hole through the screen door, and they know for sure that they hit this thing, but instead of falling over, the creature does a backflip before it runs off into the darkness, seemingly unharmed. Later, the men would say that when the bullets hit this creature, it sounded like rattling a bullet inside of an old metal drum. Around the same time, about a quarter-mile north, a neighbor has just seen lights in the woods behind the Sutton farm, and he assumes that the family is probably looking for a loose pig. But later, he hears gunshots, and he then assumes that it's a bobcat attacking the livestock, so they're dealing with that. He has no idea what is about to unfold on the farm. Back at the farmhouse, Glennie, being a devoutly religious woman, doesn't want the children hearing talk about demonoid creature beings, so she sends the kids off to bed. And as she does, there are more of these silver-short creatures popping up everywhere around the property. There are at least 2 of these creatures moving along the windows, 2 against the doorways and across the yard. It's almost like they're moving around the farmhouse in groups of 2. The family, now believing Lucky and Billy, are petrified as more of these creatures keep appearing. Lucky and Billy Ray keep shooting whenever they see a creature, but no matter what happens, no matter how many bullets they fire, these creatures never fall. They never bleed. They actually seem to be totally unaffected by the gunfire. These creatures, they're popping in and out of windows. They would suddenly reappear only to disappear and then reappear somewhere else. Their claws are scraping against the glass, almost like they're teasing and trying to provoke the family inside. Now at this point, the kids have been woken up from the gunfire, so Lucky encourages the women to go into the back room with the children. They all go except for Glennie, who is still in disbelief about what is happening. To her credit, it is pretty wild, and she still isn't convinced that this isn't some sort of prank that the boys are trying to play. Lucky and Billy fire at another creature, and then they rush outside to see if they actually hit the beam. They want to see its body. As they run outside, though, there is another creature waiting on the roof for them. On the overhang. It reaches down, grabbing Billy Ray by the hair before June comes, rescues him, and pulls him back inside. Lucky, who's made it outside, he fires at the roof, but the creature just rolls off and runs into the woods. JC, or John, has now joined them in the gunfight, and he starts firing through the actual glass. Someone inside shouts at the guys to look at the maple tree, and there, perched on a branch, is one of these creatures. But when they shoot at it, instead of running off, it just kind of floats off the branch towards the ground. And no one can figure out what it is that they are shooting at. Are these goblins, demons, or something else entirely? Glennie is convinced that the home is under siege by something of pure evil. At this point, the family spends nearly 4 hours trying to fend off these creatures. They estimate that there were at least 15 of these little beings attacking the home, and the whole time they're engaging in this shootout, they never kill, injure, or scare off a single creature. The creatures are sort of keeping their distance, but at the same time, they don't seem affected by the bullets at all. Finally, at around 11 p.m., the whole family is able to scramble to their cars, and they drive as fast as they can to the Hopkinsville police station. The desk sergeant is stunned as the family barges in crying out for help, declaring that they have been fighting with little silver men for hours. Obviously, the officer doesn't believe their story. But at the same time, the group is terrified, and with the children being out so late, they are convinced that something did happen. Police Chief Russell Greenwall is called in, and he radios for assistance from Kentucky State Police and the Fort Campbell Army Base, which sends military police. And the Kentucky News-Era newspaper hears the call traffic and sends out a photographer as well. Within hours, there are multiple different agencies at the Sutton house. They search the property, but they find no creatures. There is, however, evidence of some sort of attack that backs the family's claims. There are holes in the windows, shotgun shell casings, and bullet holes in trees, windows, and doors. Now, one of the officers does see this glowing patch in the woods, but when they go out and search the area, they find nothing there either. Near the location where Lucky claims to have shot one of these creatures, the officers do find a patch of soil with an iridescent sheen to it, but they never look any further into it. At this point, even the cops think this must be some sort of prank, so they interview the family all separately. But, to the surprise of the police, every single family member gives the same description of the creature and the night's event, including the children. It's clear that none of the adults were drinking. In fact, Glennie doesn't even allow alcohol in her home, and they found no evidence of drinking at the farmhouse either. Now, it is obvious that something had happened, but with no evidence or bodies beyond the gunfire damage, there's little the police can do, so they and the military personnel leave. And with that, the Sutton family tries to settle in for the night. Glennie gets her Jay and children to bed, and then she goes to her own bed to lay down herself. Lucky is sitting in the rocking chair beside her bed with a shotgun across his lap, keeping watch. The house is quiet, but after a harrowing night, no one is really sleeping. Around 2:30 a.m., Glennie opens her eyes and sees a small glowing figure standing outside her bedroom window. Its little claw-like hand pressed against the window screen. It's staring right at her. She closes her eyes, thinking she must be seeing things. It was a crazy night, it's late, and her mind is racing. But when she opens her eyes again, the creature is still there. Bolting out of bed, she screams, "They're back!" And Lucky and Billy Ray jump to their feet, guns in hand. For the second time that evening, the family defends their home against these creatures. For hours, the men stand guard, scanning the yard for any movement before finally, just before daybreak, the creatures finally leave. And according to the Sutton family, that's the last time they ever see these creatures. Now remember, reporters had also gotten wind of this story and had been at the farmhouse to investigate with the police. So this encounter had blown up with local and national news outlets. Radio stations, newspapers, wire services pick up the story, including the New York Times. Headlines sensationalized the event, even mocking the Suttons and the Taylors. The press started printing articles about little green men, despite witnesses describing them as silver beings. And this terminology stuck. We still use it in alien culture to this day. Hundreds of curiosity seekers descend upon the Sutton farm because of this. Now, at first, the Suttons hate all these people stomping around their farm, and they put up no trespassing signs to keep people away. But when that didn't work, they started charging 50 cents upon entry for the property, $1 for information, $10 for a photograph. Not that they made a whole lot of money in this, and realistically, the family was mostly met with ridicule. Most people thought that they had made the whole story up for fame and profit, or that they were all drunk. Still, there was no proof that the family had been drinking that evening, and they all swore no one had anything to drink. And of course, all of their stories matched, even the kids. In fact, the family had drawn images, each of them, of what they had seen, and all the drawings were incredibly similar. Eventually, they move away from the farmhouse to escape the ridicule and trespassers, and for decades afterwards, they avoided interviews and refused to discuss the incident publicly. Since then, the farmhouse has been demolished, leaving only the well behind, but that doesn't deter people from still going out there to see if they can catch a glimpse of these Kentucky goblins. Interestingly enough, just like the Flatwoods Monster, Project Bluebook also investigated the Kentucky Goblin case as well. In the days that followed, Project Bluebook personnel and military police from Fort Campbell reviewed the initial findings gathered by the Kentucky State Police. Despite rumors of there being a very large-scale military sleep, the actual official investigation was really quite small. Their overall goal was to determine whether Billy Ray's sighting of a streaking object could be explained by aerospace activity. Now, Project Bluebook didn't find a spacecraft, nor did they find any bodies. And aerospace data and radar anomalies were never detected, meaning that, according to them, nothing was in the sky that night. Overall, Project Bluebook classified the case as a hoax. Now, I do want to make it clear here that that terminology, hoax, is often used as a sort of bureaucratic catch-all for cases that didn't have any actionable evidence. They're not saying that the witnesses lied about what happened. Astronomer Dr. J. Allen Hynek was the acting skeptic for the Air Force at the time. He was the chief scientific advisor to Project Bluebook. He considered these events, as told by the Sutton-Taylor family, as, quote, offensive to common sense and preposterous, despite having never gone to Kentucky or interviewing the family himself. He thought it was a case of mass delusion and hysteria. However, after his days with Project Bluebook, Hynek had a change of heart, or rather a change in his ideology. As Hynek grew deeply disillusioned with the Air Force's unscientific dismissal of credible cases throughout the 1960s, his perspective of the Hopkinsville incident evolved of sorts. In 1973, after leaving Project Bluebook, Hynek founded the Center for UFO Studies to evaluate historical cases through a genuinely objective scientific lens. Under the umbrella of CUFOs, Hynek sponsored a massive comprehensive re-investigation into the 1955 farmhouse siege. Researchers Ted Blocher and Isabel Davis compiled an exhaustive, nearly 200-page historical report for sea UFOs. And though Hynek remained a strictly scientist who demanded physical proof, he personally reviewed the new interviews and acknowledged that the absolute consistency of the family's matching sketches, their immediate flight to the police, and their complete lack of financial profit-seeking meant that the event could not have been casually dismissed as a planned lie. Okay, so we have this supposed event where a sober family was attacked by 3-foot-tall silver creatures that floated instead of walked, had claw-like hands, glowing large eyes, could deflect bullets, and crash-landed in a UFO, yet no crash site or bodies were ever found. And still, the 11 people all told the same story and gave the exact same description. So, what was going on here? The most predominant theory is one that is pretty similar in most cases, such as the Flatwood Monsters, Mothman, and the Raymond Robinson sightings, among others. And that is that what the family actually saw was a group of territorial great horned owls. Skeptics argue that adrenaline, darkness, and fear transformed normal wildlife behavior into something far more sinister, like these crazed creatures. Great horned owls usually stand about 3 feet tall, making them the largest owls in North America. They have large yellow eyes that glow when a light hits their eyes at night. They also have very distinct ear tufts that could easily be confused for large ears. Their feathers also reflect moonlight, creating a silvery or metallic sheen, explaining why these creatures would have been perceived as silver. Great horned owls are strictly nocturnal and very territorial. They will dive bomb intruders with a silent flight. So this could be what the family saw when they shot at the creatures and they floated down from the trees. These birds will also peer into and scratch a window with their long taloned claws. But dear listener, owls are not bulletproof, so why did the bullets bounce off of them? Well, the obvious answer would be that the Suttons never actually hit any of the birds. They missed while panicking and shooting into the dark. As for the metallic sound, well, that was most likely bullets bouncing off farm equipment like metal roofs or wire fencing. Given the description from the Sutton family compared to how horned owls actually look and behave, this is where I would most likely place my money. This is also the argument that is made by Joe Nichols. Joe was a former police detective who became somewhat of a paranormal naysayer. He visited the property years later and re-interviewed surviving family that would be interviewed. He added that on the night in question, there was a confirmed meteor that did streak across the sky and was seen by several witnesses, even though Project Blue Book said that there were no anomalies in the sky that night. This was peak alien culture time, so when you add in the constant public take of UFOs to seeing a streaking object in the sky with fear and adrenaline, that's what most likely created the interpretation in the minds where an owl became E.T. Speaking of animal theories, one of the stranger and yet tenacious ideas is that the family was battling escaped circus monkeys. This idea became popular mostly because several family members, including Lucky, his wife Vera, and Billy Ray, were traveling carnival workers. Because of their line of work, it was thought that the men may have brought home some monkeys because, remember, Billy and Lucky were pranksters. So maybe it was some sort of prank until the animals escaped their enclosure on the property and things spun out of control. Now, the descriptions given by the family do match small primates like rhesus or spider monkeys, which are about 3 feet tall with long spindly arms. They would most likely climb in trees or to the rooftop of homes as they seek higher ground. And while monkeys don't have glowing silver skin, sometimes the circus would cover monkeys in carnival paint, or it's even possible that they could, if they were in fact on the farm, had gotten into some farm equipment and gotten grease into their skin. It's a stretch, most likely, but this also explains why these creatures were doing backflips. There are several problems with this idea, as you could imagine. For one, the police found no evidence of primates on or near the property, nor did any neighbors report seeing monkeys before or after the encounter. There were also no circuses, carnivals, or zoos that had reported any missing animals in 1955 near the county. And if circus monkeys isn't a theory that's out there enough for you, during the Cold War, a more sci-fi version of the theory appeared. That bright object Billy Ray saw, Well, that was a crashed U.S. military test rocket. And in the 1950s, the U.S. frequently launched primates into the upper atmosphere to test survivability. So, some claimed that they encountered a startled and irritated test monkey that escaped the crash and was wearing a silver flight suit who had wandered into the farm all disoriented.
Looking for your next obsession? The Creators Collective Podcasts is your gateway to the dark, the chilling, and the downright fascinating. We're a community of independent podcasts with one goal: to share the best in true crime, paranormal tales, folklore, and unexplained mysteries. Whether you crave cold cases that won't stay closed, haunted histories that refuse to be forgotten, or stories that make you sleep with the lights on, there's a show waiting for you in the collective. And when you join us, you're not just listening to one podcast. You're stepping into a world of creators who love this stuff as much as you do. Check out the Creators Collective today. Follow the link in our show notes to discover your next favorite podcast. We'll be waiting for you.
A favorite theory among UFOologists is that the Sutton family encountered genuine extraterrestrial entities, conducting a low-profile reconnaissance mission, not a mass landing or an invasion. In this theory, the creatures are non-aggressive scouts gathering information. Billy Ray saw this flying disc at around 7 p.m. that evening, and while most of the other witnesses say it was a meteor, there were multiple independent witnesses across Kentucky and Indiana who reported a large glowing disc in the sky that they interpreted as a mothership. According to UFOologists, what crashed in the Sutton farm was a smaller scouting craft deployed from the larger vessel. It is argued, based off the Sutton family description, that the silver skin wasn't skin. Instead, it was protective biosuits or reconnaissance armor designed for Earth's atmosphere. Large, yellow, widely spaced eyes on round heads with no visible nose or mouth suggest non-human physiology or specialized optics. Arms nearly reaching the ground and ending in sharp talon-like hands indicates a purposeful, biological designed or engineered anatomy. And UFOologists argue that these traits cannot be explained by owls, monkeys, or even hysteria. When the creatures were shot off the roof, these beings didn't fall like heavy animals. They drifted or floated gently to the ground. And UFOologists have interpreted this as an anti-gravity device or a physiological adaptation to the planet with stronger gravity. One of the strongest arguments made for the extraterrestrial theory is that the Sutton men were experienced hunters, and they fired 12-gauge shotguns, a .22 rifle, and a 20-gauge shotgun. They would know whether or not they hit an animal. They were basically at point-blank range, at distances under 20 feet. But instead of bleeding or falling, the creatures did backflips or immediately stood back up only to scuttle away unharmed. They also claimed that the bullets produced a distinct metal clinking sound, as if striking a bucket or a metal plate. And UFOologists have interpreted this as evidence of force fields or kinetic energy dampening, high-density metallic armor, or non-biological exoskeletons. So why do they argue that it was a scouting party instead of an aggressive or lost even UFO? Well, UFOologists argue that creatures' behavior fits a reconnaissance mission instead of an attack. The beings never actually attempted to break into the house. They never used weapon or inflicted any harm. They repeatedly approached the windows and doorways to observe, not to invade. And they retreated when they were shot at, only to return cautiously. Their actions suggested curiosity instead of aggression. And this aligns with the idea of a scouting party gathering data on human behavior, structure, and environmental conditions. This argument also explains why the creatures disappeared at dawn, never to be seen again. If they were just there to collect intel instead of attack, they would want to leave without being detected and used night as the diversion. There is a pseudo-abduction story that comes out of British Columbia, Canada, that kind of explains this need for cover a little bit further. The case of Granger Taylor, who said that aliens were speaking to him telekinetically and were going to take him onto an intergalactic journey through space. And they were going to take him under the cover of a thunderstorm so they wouldn't be detected. This explains why there are a lot of UFO abductions that happen at night, so they won't be detected. A popular theory among paranormal researchers and folklorists is the gentry theory. This theory suggests that the Sutton family did not encounter visitors from outer space, but rather a localized manifestation of the good people, fairies, goblins, or pixies, which are straight out of traditional Celtic or European folklore. The folklorists will argue that the behavior and physical appearance of these entities match century-old fairy lore much more closely than they match modern high-tech extraterrestrial archetypes. In traditional Celtic folklore, fairies are rarely depicted as tiny winged creatures found in modern children's stories. Instead, they were depicted as subterranean humanoids with specific features that align directly with the Sutton family's sketches. The oversized ears are traditional in goblin and puck folklore. They are routinely depicted as massive pointy backlight ears. The shimmering silver skin? Well, fairies are often depicted as radiating an unnatural luminous glow, wearing clothes spun from shining unearthly materials. Even the bullets and gravity-defying features can be explained with fairy mythology. In folklore, supernatural entities cannot be harmed by conventional mortal weapons like lead bullets. Standard firearms would pass through them or bounce off of them harmlessly. Traditionally, only cold iron or silver can harm or repel them. Fairies are spirits of the air and the earth, and historically have been reported to levitate, float, or drift on the wind and disappear into thin air when startled. One of the creatures yanked Billy Ray by his hair, and folklorists note that pulling hair, pinching sleeping humans, and poking at livestock are all classic textbook examples of fairy malice or trickery. Paranormal researchers note that the geography of the encounter fits the profile of folkloric events perfectly. The farm was situated in a rural, isolated patch of Kentucky, near natural gullies and woods, which historically have been associated with thin places, where spirit world bleeds into ours. Furthermore, the incident took place in late August, a time of year historically tied to ancient agriculture festivals, where the barrier between humans and the fae were believed to be at its weakest. One of the biggest supporters for this argument is Jacques Vallée. He is a world-renowned venture capitalist, computer scientist, and a UFOologist who worked closely with Dr. J. Allen Hynek. In his 1969 book, Passage to Magonia, From Folklore to Flying Saucers, Vallée argued that modern UFO phenomenon is simply a high-tech mask for the exact same entity phenomenon that humans used to call fairies, elves, and even demons. Vallée specifically looked at the Kelly Hopkinsville case to argue that these trickster entities alter their appearance based on human culture. And in the 1950s, it was an era obsessed with rockets and space travel, so the entities would have manifested with metallic traits and spaceship landings, even though their actual behavior was identical to ancient goblin encounters. At the end of the day, there are still a lot of people who agree that the family was making it up. But there was genuine terror and medical symptoms that presented. All 11 occupants arrived at the police department, and Russell Greenwald and his officers could clearly see that the family wasn't feigning hysteria. There were medical evaluations that noted that Billy Ray's pulse, for example, was racing nearly twice the resting normal speed, a physiological response to extreme fear that cannot be faked on command. Sheriff Greenwood even testified to newspapers and military officials that the family members were completely sober and genuinely terrified. He was convinced that there was no way that this could have been a hoax or a pre-planned scheme. Another big supporter that this wasn't a hoax was the household dynamic. Glennie Langford was an intensely private religious woman who didn't allow alcohol or cursing on her property, and investigators concluded that it was fundamentally against her character to permit such an elaborate trick. She had a stellar reputation in the community as a trustworthy, quiet woman who would never subject her young children to hours of terrifying gun chaos or invite national media spotlight onto her home. The family also received zero financial profit or fame from this event. I mean, yes, at first they did turn away paying tourists, but then they eventually gave in, probably as a deterrent. And really, they made what, $1 or $2? But overall, they flat out refused to sell the media rights to their story and aggressively avoided reporters. The aftermath of the event brought immense local ridicule and dangerous trespassing from UFO seekers. Ultimately, the family was so traumatized and miserable that they fled the area entirely, abandoning their farm just to escape the public eye, an action completely inconsistent with intentional public stunts. And you would think, with such a mass-scale, well-known story, that at some point there would maybe be a deathbed confession or a slip-up from the children, but over the decades, every single family member has insisted that their story was real and held to their account for the remainder of their lives, passing polygraph evaluations and maintaining their exact testimony until death. The Suttons never saw their visitors again, but years later, another Kentucky resident began reporting creatures of his own, creatures that looked disturbingly similar, and his letters would become one of the strangest modern cases in the Appalachian folklore. And they're exactly where we're headed next week. Thanks for wandering down this crooked path with me. There's always something watching the edge of these stories, guiding you a little deeper than you were meant to go. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's something older. Either way, you followed it here. This is Amanda Joy, signing off. Follow the path further. If this episode left you lingering in the shadows, there's more to explore. Follow at Down the Crooked Path on TikTok and Instagram for haunting visuals, behind-the-scenes lore, and updates on upcoming episodes. Every post is another breadcrumb deeper into the strange, the forgotten, and the beautifully unsettling. Stay curious and keep walking.